Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah wa ba'd. All praise due to Allah and His praise and blessings and peace be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. My dear brothers and sisters, as you see, the only reason I took my mask today is because after I put this, just to protect you, the whole point is to protect you from, in case if I have the virus. But still everybody is required inside the masjid to keep their mask on, and as well as the Imām when he comes down from this place. Today I would like to speak to you about the issue of the nation. That it is very hard just to ignore and to move on. That while we are the city where George Floyd was buried and his funeral just took place here in Houston, Texas. As a Muslim community, we should have a lot of reflections about what is happening in the country today. And these are just few points that I want to share with you. Hopefully it will be something that we benefit from it as a community. Number one, we need to remember that this incident is not just an isolated incident. And it's not just an incident that a bad apple or a bad just as circumstances that he was in the wrong time, in the wrong place, with the wrong person. It is much bigger than that. And it is more systematic than this. And it is something that we've been seeing it so often. That after, for many years, that we've been seeing a lot of people from the African American community targeted, and power was abused when dealing with them. So you can't just say it's an isolated incident. I'll be too wrong, too naive, and not fair to describe what is happening in our country today. Also, it is so dangerous as well, is for us as a community, is to feel that this is not something of a major concern for us as a Muslim community, or as a community who lived in suburb and maybe are less targeted or have more friendly police in our neighborhood. I think that would be completely wrong to look at it this way. Why it is important for us, especially as a Muslim community, to confront this issue and to be part of this conversation that's happening today, and the pushback that's happening in the country today in regard to this issue. Number one, we need to remember that the vast majority of our Muslim convert brothers and sisters are African American. When you look at the indigenous Muslims here are Black Americans. Are the earlier Muslim who came to this country and established Islam in this country. African American, Muslims make 20% of the Muslim population in United States alone, and some, according to Pew Research Center, and some even will say all the way up to 40%. But according to the Pew Research Center, said it's 20%. So it is something so important for us because African American community is it's part of our community as Muslim. It's not something I didn't care about, it's something happened far away from me. It's directly linked to us as a community. Also, from another perspective, that we as a Muslim community, we ourselves are minority. And as the African American community is minority, we as well as the Muslim community as a whole, we are minority. And we all know the famous statement, "Ukiltu yawman ukila thawr al-abyad." When there is a herd of bulls, and there's among them just one white, and all the rest were black. So, you know what? There was somebody target them and he said, I want to kill. So he said, you know what? You can kill that white one, which it doesn't belong to the herd. It looks different. So after they give up that brother of them, just because he looked different, have a different color, the hunters start hunting them one after another. because opened the door. And it became a very famous saying in Arabic that they say, "Ukiltu yawman ukila thawru al-abyad." You know, I was eaten the day I allowed them to eat the white ball. And in other words, if we will allow this to happen to this community, it's your turn is going to be next. And as a Muslim community, we are suffering from a stigma that is attached to us as a community of violence. We heard and we've been hearing, and it didn't go away, just not because, we didn't hear it too often these days, but we all know what they say, the slogan that not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims. It is, the racial profiling at airports. That's something we dealt with. We dealt a lot with this. Every time there is a crazy person do something evil in the name of our religion, we all get, judged and hold accountable for it by masses. When we allowed one community to be targeted, one community to be their rights to be abused, one community to watch, or when we allowed one member of our community for him to, be killed in front of the people in public and the people just passing by, and the best they can do, they just take a video of it, even though I appreciate that video. But if that's the best that we can, you know what? Tomorrow your son and my son and you and me can be under the knees of that officer. Also, it is important for us as part of the society. We as a community cannot live separated from the society that we're living in. We contribute to the society, the society affect us and we affect them back. We don't want to live in America where authoritarian, and America turned to be another Middle Eastern country like the Kingdom of Arabia or the Republican of Syria or Egypt or, a turned country like Yemen or Libya. We don't want that. Who wants this for his country? Who wants a country where, we all know, as many of us immigrants, knows what kind of system that we have, a corrupt system when you have an ultimate power in the hand of a ruler. Who wants this to live that? And you being complicit, you being, doing nothing, you being just ignoring the fact that this is something of concern to you, it's a terrible thing. That means we are leading the society to this end. And there is no exaggerations. There is no exaggerations in this issue. That's, a natural, normal progress for anyone to study history. That's how it goes. If there is no pushback, if we don't maintain the laws that for hundreds of years, the good laws that for hundreds of years and more than 100 years maintain civility and promote equality and respect for citizens, it's easy to lose. It is so dangerous that you think that what you have is something that you have it for granted. You always have to fight to keep it and to make it grow. And we as members of society, we have to learn how to do that and to be part of that process. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of His power that He brings life out of death. There's so many concepts and issues born alive out of the death of this young man in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. At least the feeling that I feel that I care. I hope that feeling will be born in the heart and the mind of each and every one of us. And we know that this is serious. And this is something can happen to any one of us. And what can we do to ensure that we live in society that respects its citizens? There is also another point that it's important to be mentioned here. That this incident shows that all people capable to do what is right and capable to do what is evil. All people there is good and bad on them. And it depends which one of these tigers you feed more will win the battle. And which one you invoke It will dominate. If we invoke in us hatreds, racism, ignorance, violence, that's what we're going to be. And if we invoke what's the goodness inside us, that's what we're going to be as individual and society and community. And that leads us to understand the importance of a good leadership. Oh my goodness. This incident, with coronavirus, we saw the lack of the leadership. Can you put your mask on, please? The lack of the leadership just to deal with epidemic that like the virus that we have. But it's even way worse when it comes to corrupting the mind and the heart of people and turning the society against each other. The lack of leadership, because the true meaning of leadership appear in a time of chaos, a time when people in dear need of someone to unify them, to bring them together. People who are truly strong lift others up. But people who are truly powerful are the people who can bring people together. And unfortunately, that means trust. Having a sitting president today, who 60% of the society don't trust him, it's very hard for me to see him be able to unify the society. And if we keep going this way, I don't know where we're heading. And that requires from us to know that we have the power. And that's something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have blessed us here to do. That we have a power as citizens and people of society to choose. Many of these incidents that you see today, many of the people who are responsible for handling it are people who are in their position because they get elected. From the mayor and the head of the police and the attorney general and many positions in our city who directly responsible for what will happen when incident like this take place or how they handle it are people who are elected by us. But as you maybe read it once in our masjid, bad officials are elected when good people don't participate. When good people, I'm not saying election will solve everything, no. I'm not saying it's one round, no, it's a long-term process. But we can voice our concern. We do have some ways to make these changes happen. And we should not just complain about it. And don't listen to those who saying didn't do anything. This kind of talk did not do anything. Because you know what? Violence will not do anything except increasing the problem. And this claim that nothing have changed all these years is not true. Today we're having demonstrations and people standing up for black people in cities when you don't see a single black in the demonstrations. In Wyoming, in Idaho, in many places, more than 77 out of every 10 Americans believe that there is a justification for the demonstration that we see today. 60% show sympathy to the demonstrations. You will never find that number. Taking into consideration the African American are only 12% of America, 13% of America. You will not find that number in the 60s and 40s and 50s. What you see today in the colorful demonstration that you see in the streets of America is not the result of anything but a long work that made the country to heal and to come together. We're far away from being perfect. But we see a progress made over the years. And it will be fool not to see that or to progress. This incident, there's two sides of it. We should not lose sight of it. Number one is police brutality. And that police brutality happened with black, white, Hispanic, anyone. That happened with any person. And it became more when the person who's the bullies, he feels that he will not be held accountable for it, so he will target the weakest in the society. Otherwise, it's crazy that when you look at the Hispanic also numbers and the African American numbers, it's crazy how it is way high percentage of people who are convicted, go to jail, and abused and shot to kill in the streets of America are so high in percentage when it comes to these ethnic group versus white. But in general, it's a very brutal. In the United States, just to compare, now we're at which month is that? June. Since January until today, there is 172 people were shot and killed in the street of America from the white race. 88 black, 57 Hispanic. Just until June. In 2018, 399 white and 370 in 19. Decrease. But look, in 2018, 209 black Americans were killed in the street, while in 18 it was 235. Hispanic in 18 was 148. In 19 jumped to 158. These numbers you might say, oh, there's more white. Yeah, but remember, white are 73% of the country. And black are 13% of the country, or 12.6 in the country. Hispanic, 16% of the country. And you see the numbers almost equal. That's crazy. That's unbelievable. 60% of the population of present in America are African Americans. My brothers and sisters, so the side of brutality and using force and being trained to be a police patrol, not a community friend, to be trained to actually to be giving you tools to criminalize all kind of actions, it make you deal with criminals, not citizens. That's something need to be reviewed, need to be to change. The attitude, the training. So the police brutality, I do also believe, because I'm a realist in the end of the day, I do believe it's a natural thing. People of military and police, by nature, they are strong. They can easily use force. And that's why, subhanAllah, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, especially when there is a corrupt system and a corrupt leader, he said, لا تكن لهم شرطيا ولا حريفا. That's why there's so many talk in the scholars about, dislike being, in these kind of positions, especially when there is a corrupt system, give you the ability to abuse. Because the nature of human beings is what? ظلوما جهولا, oppressor. Oppress with ignorance. So I understand that. But there must be pushback, must be a law to protect, must allow to hold people accountable. And the other side of it, it's the racism, it's the prejudice, it's the pre-notion that we judge people by their skin colors or their last names or their ethnicity. So if you're Hispanic or if you're black, or if you're, this, immediately I have this, understanding or perceptions about you and think of you as something of threat. And we all heard that phone call for the African American guy who was watching the birds. And how the woman told him, I'm going to just call the police, tell them there's an African American man. That's the key point. Threat to my life. The key point was in the black officer in the court when the lawyer of the lady who was unfortunately shot dead. Which is a tragedy and something wrong. Not defending the action of the officer. But the key point was in that, argument of the lawyer was one strong point. When the officer said, I felt my life was threatened, it was enough for the lawyer to say, what is threatened about a blonde white girl in a pink shirt? Or a blonde girl in a pink shirt. That was enough, because already there is a perception. So the issue of changing that perceptions and taking that from the heart of people and changing that's a long-term work. That's a work of da'wah, not a work of law. That's a work of spreading the message of love and care. And you know what? I do believe no matter what we can do in society, we'll never become to 100% or even near that. Because even in the prophetic society, there were racism, there were prejudice. But the Islam is the thing that controlled racism, controlled prejudice, controlled us not to go beyond the level of just being prejudiced or being racist to be abuser and to act upon that. Otherwise, in the Medina society, in Mecca society, in the Umayyads, in the Abbasids, in all history, Muslim and non-Muslim, people have that concept. That's why Nabi قال ثنتان من أمر الجاهلية لا تزال في أمتي. Two things will remain in my ummah until the day of judgment. One of them, what? Al-fakhru bil-ansab. You feel prejudiced of your race and your background, where you're from. Allah said in the Quran, هو الذي ألف بين قلوب الناس. كنتم على شفا حفرة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He is the one that put the hearts together. That's why I love what some of the du'at says. If we're looking for the oneness of man, we should accept the oneness of God first. That's something that we should be inspired by as Muslims. You know, Islam is the one that make that restrictions. And I will end with this. Abu Mas'ud al-Badri رضي الله Badri, يعني من خيرة الصحابة في الجنة. He is from Ahl Badr. Had one of his slaves working for him, and he was hitting him and beating him with a stick, with the whip. قال فسمعت صوتا من خلفي. I heard a voice from behind me. I didn't recognize it because I was so angry at my servant at that point. I was so angry. And when I heard that voice, I couldn't hear who he is. And he said that voice saying to me, he said to him, he said, إن الله أقدر عليك من قدرتك على هذا. That Allah have more control and more capable of doing to you what you are doing to this poor servant. At this point, I doubted, is this the voice of Rasulullah? And I looked back, and he was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. يقول من الخوف سقط الصوت. I was terrified, and the whip fell from my hand, dropped it. Then he said, Ya Rasulullah, forgive me. Ya Rasulullah, forgive me. Ya Allah. هو حر لوجه الله. He's a free man to go. إيش قال له النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم؟ قال لو لم تفعل للفحتك النار. If he didn't do that, you will end up in hellfire. See, immediately, Abu Mas'ud, see what that religion does. That's what religion make that, control, that desire, that ignorant feeling inside you, that ignorant traits inside you. قال فوالله ما ضربت بعدها بيدي عبدا ولا مملوكا قط. Never beat anyone else in my life. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to heal our hearts and to heal our countries and to bring us together. Sallallahu sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Alhamdulillah wahdahu wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'dahu wa ba'd. My brothers and sisters, this incident should not focus on the symptoms or the examples of George Floyd, but it should focus on the roots of the problem. How can we put in place a system, in place assurance, tools to help to make our city, then our states, then our country safer? Yes, protest is one tool. Elections is one tool. Talking with people in power is another tool. Public relations and a good, relationship with government is another tool. Electing good people is another. Many tools has to be used, not one. And I'm proud to announce that Clear Lake Islamic Center with, take a leading effort through an organization that we have established in Houston, the Imām associations in Houston, working with Minaret Foundation as well, with Rabbi associations in Houston, demanding an oversight committee over the police department in Houston. demanding a more sensitive training and de-escalation training for the police. And 6 councilmen and women in Houston adopted that resolution or that suggestion, that letter, and they are voting on it to be turned to law. It's just one step that we can take many other steps as well. But that's what we need. We need to have a concrete plan. We have to look at it. We have to use a common sense. I know it is and I understand and I recognize the anger, the frustration. And I want to say this in the end of my khutbah today. If the only thing that can be born alive in our heart out of this or come out of this incident is that we feel at least the concern and the pain that our brothers and sisters having out there. And I ask each and every one of you right now, and be brave enough if you can challenge me. Anyone listening to me today, from those who, alhamdulillah, Allah blessed them with so many things, living in the suburb, living good life, you're not among the African American community. I ask you by Allah, would you, if I ask each and one of you, hey, do you feel that there is something wrong going on? You might have a mixed answer. Some people say, I don't know if there's exaggeration. But you know what? For all those people talk to you like this, or anyone has this kind of thoughts in your mind, I want you right now, if you feel that that's okay, what's the African American going through, stand up and replace yourself with one of them. If you wish to be in the shoes of any African American man in America, stand up and go switch with him. Live one day like him or her. When your son get their driver license, you congratulate them, you talk to them about how important to be safe and how important to drive safely and all this. You know what African American fathers say to their children and mothers? Watch the police, man. You can get killed. That's the type of conversation that they have with children, that you never have to go through. You never have to talk to your children about it. But they do. It's a terrifying thing to own a car and to drive a car in the street. This didn't happen, by the way, in the Third World. That's happened in Clear Lake. That happened in League City. That happened in your neighborhood. Be grateful. That incident should make us grateful and thankful. And I don't want you to feel petty about our African American brothers. They don't deserve that. Do you know what they deserve? You deserve that you feel respect for them and what they're going through. We as Muslims have things that control our reactions. That's why we condemn any reaction that has to do with generalizing. Police force and police enforcement, there is a great men and women there. Absolutely, and I know many of them personally. White people and black people, there's good and bad in everyone. Brown. We don't generalize. Our anger never led us to hurt someone or to destroy public property. Our religion teaches we don't make people suffer, and we don't also forsake people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yarzuqana wa iyyakum ilman nafi'an wa amalan salihan. اللهم إنا نسألك هذا الجلال والإكرام أن تحفظنا بحفظك وتكلأنا برعايتك. اللهم وفقنا لما تحب وترضى. اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا. Ya Allah, I ask you by your names and attributes to bring a good leadership to this country, to guide this country and to the people of this country to what is good, to what pleases you. We ask you, Allah, to heal the hearts and to remove the oppressions from the oppressed one. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us a beneficial knowledge and righteous deeds. اللهم صل على محمد وآله واغفر لنا ولوالدينا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات وأكثروا من الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وقوموا للصلاة يرحمكم الله.